You can lose everything in one night and still choose to give your last dollar away. The rain falls steady over the empty street, tapping against broken pavement and flickering streetlights that barely hold the darkness back. And Emily Dawson walks with her shoulders tight, her breath visible in the cold air, her worn sneakers soaked through after hours of cleaning floors that no one ever notices. The kind of job that ends quietly with no thank you, just a nod and a paycheck that never stretches far enough. And tonight, even that is gone because 15 minutes ago her manager didn't even look at her when he said they were cutting staff, said it like it was nothing, like she was nothing. And just like that, the only thing keeping her afloat disappeared, and now she's out here with a thin hoodie, a canvas bag slung over her shoulder, and exactly $23 and some loose change in her pocket. Not enough for rent, not enough for her brother's medication, not enough for anything that actually matters. And she keeps walking because stopping would mean thinking. And thinking would mean breaking. And she can't afford that either. Not tonight. Not when everything already feels like it's slipping through her fingers, and the wind picks up, sharp and cold, pushing against her like the city itself is telling her to keep moving. Don't slow down. Don't fall behind. And she almost misses him at first, just a shape near the edge of a bus stop bench, hunched forward, still in a way that doesn't feel normal. And she hesitates because this is how trouble starts. This is how people like her get pulled into things they can't fix, and she should keep walking. She knows she should. She even takes 2 steps past him before something pulls her back, something quiet but stubborn that refuses to let her ignore it. And when she turns again, she sees it clearer now. A man sitting there, soaked through, head lowered, hands resting loosely like he's too tired to hold himself together. And there's something about him that doesn't match the situation, something in the way he carries himself even in stillness. Like this isn't where he belongs, like none of this is supposed to be happening. And Emily exhales slowly, her fingers tightening around the strap of her bag as she walks back toward him. Each step heavier than the last because she already knows what this means. She already knows helping him will cost her something she can't spare, but she stops anyway, standing just close enough to speak, her voice softer than she expects when it comes out. Hey, are you okay? And he lifts his head just enough for her to catch a glimpse of tired eyes, sharp even through exhaustion. And for a second neither of them says anything, the rain filling the silence between strangers who were never supposed to meet. And she reaches into her pocket without fully thinking it through, her fingers brushing against the folded bills that were meant to get her through the next day. Maybe 2 if she stretched it, and she pulls out the largest one without counting, without calculating, without protecting herself the way she should. And she holds it out to him with a small, almost apologetic shrug. It's not much, but maybe it helps. And the moment hangs there, fragile and irreversible, because she knows this is it. This is the line between holding on and letting go. And she crosses it anyway, not because it makes sense, not because it's safe, but because somewhere deep inside her, she still believes that doing the right thing matters even when no one is watching, even when it costs you everything. The man does not take the money right away, and that is what unsettles her the most, because most people would have grabbed it without thinking. But he just looks at it like it means something more than its value, like it carries weight. And when he finally reaches out his hand, it is slow, careful, almost hesitant, his fingers brushing hers for just a second before he pulls back with the bill, his voice low but steady when he speaks. You should not do this. And Emily lets out a small breath. That almost sounds like a laugh because she has already done it. She has already crossed that line, and there is no taking it back now. So she shrugs like it does not matter, even though it does. Even though everything about her situation says it matters more than anything. It is. Fine, she says quietly. Just get somewhere warm. And for a moment she thinks that is the end of it. Just another small moment swallowed by a city that never remembers kindness. But he is still looking at her, not with pity, not with desperation, but with something else she cannot quite name, something sharp and observant, like he is memorizing her face. And it makes her shift slightly under the weight of it. Uncomfortable in a way she cannot explain, and then he nods once, firm, like he has made a decision. I will not forget this, he says, and she almost tells him that he probably will, that people always do, but the words stay in her throat because something about the way he says it feels different, feels real in a way she is not used to. So instead she just gives a small smile and steps back. wrapping her arms around herself as the cold settles in deeper now that the adrenaline is fading. And she turns before she can second-guess anything, before she can reach back and take the money she cannot afford to lose, and she walks away faster this time. Her steps uneven as the reality starts catching up to her, because that $20 bill was supposed to be her safety net, her buffer, the thin line between getting through tomorrow and not. And now it is gone. Just like the job, just like everything else that seemed stable only hours ago. And the city feels bigger somehow, colder, louder, even though the street is still almost empty. And by the time she reaches the corner, her hands are shaking, not just from the weather but from the weight of what she has done. And she presses them into her sleeves, trying to steady herself, telling herself it was the right thing, telling herself it will come back somehow, even if she does not believe it yet. And the next morning comes too fast, gray light slipping through the cracked window of the small room she is about to lose, her alarm buzzing like an annoyance rather than a lifeline. And she sits up slowly, staring at the wall for a long moment before reality settles in again, heavier this time because it is no longer happening. It has already happened, and she moves through the morning on instinct, pulling on the same worn clothes, checking her phone even though she knows there are no messages, no missed calls, no sudden opportunities waiting for her. And when she steps outside, the cold hits just as hard as the night before. Only now there is no distraction, no moment of choice to focus on, just the long stretch of uncertainty ahead, and somewhere across the city, in a building she has never seen. The man from the bus stop stands in front of a floor-to-ceiling window, clean, composed, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that fits like it was made for him, because it was, his hair neatly styled, his expression unreadable as he looks out over the skyline, the $20 bill resting on the table beside him, perfectly flattened, completely dry, and untouched. By noon, the city has already decided what Emily is worth. And it is not much, because every place she walks in it gives her the same look, the same polite rejection wrapped in words that sound softer than they feel. We are not hiring right now. Or leave your number, and we will call. And she nods every time like she believes them even though she knows they will not call, not without an address, not without experience that sounds impressive on paper, not without something she does not have. And by the third place, her stomach is already tight with hunger because she skipped breakfast again, not by choice but by necessity, and she keeps moving anyway because stopping means admitting defeat, and she is not ready to do that yet. Not when her brother is still counting on her. Not when there has to be something left for her somewhere in this city, and hours pass like that. One rejection blending into the next until the sky starts to dim again and the temperature drops just enough to remind her of the night before. And she ends up outside a small community center she has passed 100 times but never walked into. The lights warm behind the glass, people moving inside, and she hesitates because she does not like asking for help. She never has. But today feels different. Today feels like she has already given more than she had. And maybe just this once she can take something back, even if it is just a place to sit for a few minutes. And when she steps inside, the air is warmer than she expects, carrying the faint smell of soup and coffee. And someone at the front desk gives her a small smile that does not feel forced. Just simple, human, and it catches her off guard enough that she forgets to be guarded. First time here? The woman asks gently, and Emily nods, her voice quiet when she answers. I just needed somewhere to sit. And the woman gestures toward the back. You are welcome to stay as long as you need. And that simple sentence hits harder than anything else as all day because no one has said that to her in a long time. And she moves slowly toward an empty chair, lowering herself into it like she is not sure she belongs there, her bag still clutched close, her eyes scanning the room out of habit. And for a moment, she lets herself breathe, really breathe, the tension in her shoulders easing just enough to feel it. And she does not notice the man across the room watching her, not at first, because he blends in too well now, dressed simply, quietly, nothing like the version of himself that stands in glass offices overlooking the city. And yet his eyes are the same, sharp, focused, taking in every detail, every movement. And when he sees her sit down, sees the exhaustion she is trying to hide, something shifts in his expression, something that was not there before, something that feels a little too personal for a stranger. And he turns slightly, speaking low to the person beside him, his voice controlled but carrying a weight that is hard to ignore. That is her. And the assistant beside him follows his gaze, confusion flickering across her face before understanding settles in, and she nods once, already reaching for her phone, but he stops her with a small movement of his hand, his eyes still on Emily as she wraps her fingers around a paper cup of coffee she has just been handed, holding it like it is something fragile, something important, and for the first time since the night before, she looks almost still, almost safe, and he exhales slowly, a decision forming not out of impulse this time, but something deeper, something deliberate, because this is no longer just about a moment in the rain. It is about what comes after, and he is not the kind of man who lets something like that go unnoticed. Emily does not stay long at first because staying feels dangerous in a different way. Like if she gets too comfortable, she might forget how quickly things can disappear. So she finishes the coffee slowly, every sip careful, stretching the warmth as long as she can, her fingers wrapped around the paper cup like it is something steady in a day that has not been steady at all. And when she finally stands up to leave, she thanks the woman at the front desk with a quiet sincerity that makes the woman smile a little wider, like she understands more than Emily has said, and Emily steps back out into the cold with a slightly slower breath. Not because anything has changed, but because for a moment it did not feel so heavy. And across the room the man watches her go, his gaze following her until the door closes behind her, the sound soft but final, and only then does he shift his posture, the calm control returning fully as he turns to his assistant, who is still waiting for direction, her phone half raised like she is ready to act the second he gives the word, "Find out everything." He says quietly, not rushed, not emotional, just certain, and she nods immediately because that is what people do around him. They respond, they execute, they do not question, and within minutes the process has already begun. Names, records, addresses, fragments of a life being gathered and assembled into something clear, something understandable, something he can analyze, because that is how his world works, information first, decisions after, but this time it feels different even to him, less like strategy and more like something he cannot fully define. And by the time he leaves the community center, the rain has stopped, but the streets are still wet, reflecting the city lights in long stretched lines that blur with every passing car. And he steps into a waiting vehicle without hesitation, the door closing softly behind him, shutting out the noise, the cold, the ordinary world he stepped into only days ago, and inside everything is quiet, controlled, familiar, and yet his attention stays fixed on one thing as his assistant slides a tablet toward him, the screen already filled with details. "Emily Dawson," she says, her voice efficient but softer than usual, like even she senses the weight of this moment. 26 years old, part-time cleaner, recently terminated, no fixed address as of this week, one dependent, younger brother, medical expenses ongoing, and the words land one after another, forming a picture that is sharper than he expected, harsher, too, and he studies the screen in silence, his expression unreadable, but his mind moving quickly, connecting the version of her from the night before with the reality in front of him now. And for the first time in a long time something unsettles him, not because he does not understand, but because he does, because he sees exactly how much that $20 bill meant and exactly how easily she gave it away. And he leans back slightly, exhaling slowly as the city passes outside the window in blurred streaks of light. And then he looks up, his decision already made before he speaks it. "Set up a meeting," he says, his tone calm, but leaving no room for interpretation. "But not like this." And his assistant pauses, just for a second, because she knows what "like this" means. The offices, the formal invitations, the power imbalance that defines every interaction in his world. And she nods again, adjusting her plan instantly. "Understood," she replies, and as the car moves forward into the night, he glances once more at the image on the screen. A simple photo pulled from a file, nothing remarkable at first glance, and yet he knows better now, because sometimes the smallest actions carry the most weight, and this time he is not interested in testing that. He is interested in understanding it. The next morning does not feel like a new beginning because nothing in Emily's life resets overnight. Not the unpaid rent, not the unanswered job applications, not the quiet worry sitting heavy in her chest every time she thinks about her brother. And she wakes up on a borrowed couch in a small apartment that belongs to a coworker who said she could stay for a few days, just a few, and even. That kindness feels temporary, fragile, like everything else she has been holding on to lately. And she moves quietly, so she does not wake anyone, slipping on her shoes near the door, her bag still light, because there is not much left to carry, and she steps outside into the crisp morning air with no clear plan except to keep going. Because stopping is not an option, not when people are depending on her. And the city is already alive around her. Cars passing, people rushing, lives moving forward. Without hesitation, and she blends into it the way she always does, unnoticed, unremarkable. Just another person trying to make it through the day, and she walks toward the bus stop out of habit even though she does not have anywhere specific to be. Just movement, just the illusion of direction, and when she reaches it she pauses for a second, her eyes landing on the exact spot where she stood the night before, where everything shifted without her realizing it, and she exhales slowly, shaking the thought away because there is no time to dwell on moments that cannot be undone, and she sits down, her hands tucked into her sleeves again as the cold lingers in the air, and across the street a black car is parked quietly, blending in just enough not to draw attention, and inside Julian Cross watches her through the glass, his posture still, composed, but his focus entirely on her. And this time there is no distance created by misunderstanding, no illusion about who he is or what he can do, just a clear awareness of both. And yet he does not step out immediately. He waits, observing the way she sits, the way she looks around not with curiosity, but with calculation, like she is always measuring what comes next, and it is a detail that stays with him, something that does not belong to someone careless or naive. And after a moment he opens the door and steps out, the movement subtle but deliberate, his shoes hitting the pavement with quiet confidence, and when Emily looks up she does not recognize him right away, not like this, not in clean clothes, not standing straight, not carrying the quiet authority that now surrounds him, and for a brief second she assumes he is just another stranger approaching the bus stop, another passing moment in a day full of them. And then he stops in front of her, just close enough, and her eyes shift, narrowing slightly as something familiar begins to surface, something she cannot quite place yet. And he speaks before she can decide, his voice calm, steady, the same voice but without the weight of exhaustion that had masked it before. "You helped me." And the words land softly but unmistakably, and Emily's breath catches just enough for her to realize, just enough for the memory to snap into place. The rain, the cold, the moment she gave something she could not afford to give, and she stands slowly, her guard rising instinctively because nothing about this feels simple anymore. Not the way he looks, not the way he carries himself, not the way he is looking at her now. And for a second neither of them moves, the space between them filled with everything unspoken. And then he reaches into his coat, pulling out a perfectly folded bill, the same one, untouched, and holds it out toward her. "I believe this belongs to you," he says, and Emily looks at it, then back at him, her expression shifting not into relief, but into something sharper, something more complicated, because this is not just about money anymore. This is about what it meant to give it away, and what it means to have it returned. Emily does not take the money, and that is the first thing he notices because most people would. Most people in her position would not even hesitate, but she just looks at it, her eyes steady, her posture guarded in a way that feels deliberate, and after a second she shakes her head slightly. "No," she says, her voice quiet but firm, and he pauses, the bill still extended between them. The moment stretching longer than expected because this is not how these exchanges usually go, not in his world. Not when someone is given something they clearly need. "You gave it to me," he replies evenly, as if stating a simple fact, but she exhales softly, her gaze shifting past him for just a second before returning. "I did not give it so you could give it back," she says, and there is no anger in her tone, just clarity, just a boundary. That feels stronger than her situation should allow, and that catches him off guard more than anything else has so far, because this is not about pride in the way he has seen before, not about ego or performance. This is something quieter, something rooted deeper, and he lowers his hand slightly, studying her in a way that is no longer analytical, but almost searching, like he is trying to understand something that does not fit into the patterns he knows. And Emily shifts her weight, uncomfortable now under the intensity of his attention. "Look, I have to go," she adds, her voice softer this time but no less certain, and she steps around him before he can respond, her movement quick but not rushed, like she has already decided that whatever this is, she does not want to be part of it. And for a moment he just stands there, watching her walk away again, the same way she did the night before, leaving him with something unfinished, something unresolved, and this time it does not sit right with him, not because he expects anything from her, but because he realizes he has approached this the wrong way. He has treated it like a transaction when it was never meant to be one, and he turns slightly, calling after her without raising his voice. Then let me do something else, and she slows just enough to hear him, her shoulders tightening before she turns back, cautious, skeptical, and he takes a step closer, not enough to invade her space, but enough to make it clear he is serious, not as repayment. He continues, choosing his words more carefully now, as an opportunity, and she studies him for a second, her expression unreadable, like she is weighing not just what he is saying, but what he represents, the difference between them suddenly more visible than it was before, and she crosses her arms slightly, a subtle shield. Opportunity for what? She asks, and there is a challenge in her voice now, not aggressive, just honest, and he nods once, as if he expected that question, as if he has been waiting for it. For you to not have to struggle like this, he says simply, and the words hang there, heavy with implication, heavier than he intends, because the moment they leave his mouth he sees the shift in her expression, not relief, not gratitude, but something sharper, something defensive, and she lets out a small breath that almost sounds like disbelief. You do not even know me, she replies, and there is a quiet strength in it that makes it clear she is not someone who will accept help without understanding the cost, and he nods again, slower this time, acknowledging the truth in that. Then let me, he says, and for the first time there is something in his voice that is not controlled, not calculated, something that sounds almost human, almost uncertain, and Emily notices it, just for a second, just enough to hesitate, and in that hesitation the moment shifts again. No longer just about money or kindness, but about something more complicated, something neither of them fully understands yet, and neither of them is ready to walk away from completely. Emily does not answer right away, and that silence says more than anything she could have said because it is not hesitation out of confusion. It is calculation, the kind that comes from being let down too many times to believe in easy solutions. And she studies him carefully now, really looking at him. Not just the man from the rain, but the way he stands, the way he speaks, the way everything about him feels different, controlled, intentional, like nothing in his world happens by accident, and it puts her on edge in a way she cannot ignore. People do not just offer opportunities to strangers, she says finally, her voice calm but guarded, and he does not deny it, does not soften it. He just nods slightly as if that is exactly the point. You are right, he says, and for a moment that throws her off because she expected a pitch, a justification, something that would make this easier to dismiss. But he does not give her that. He just stands there with the truth laid out plainly between them, and that makes it harder to walk away, not easier. And she exhales slowly, shifting her weight again as the cold wind moves between them. So what is this really? She asks, her eyes narrowing just enough to show she is not going to accept anything vague. And this time he takes a second before answering, not because he does not know what to say, but because he is choosing what matters. It is me trying to understand why someone would give away something they clearly needed, he says, and the honesty in it lands differently than anything else he has said so far. Not like a business offer, not like a transaction, but something more personal, something that feels almost out of place coming from him. And Emily blinks, caught off guard by the answer because it is not what she expected, not even close. And for a second the tension between them shifts into something quieter, something more human, but it does not last long because reality settles back in quickly, sharp and practical. That is not a reason to change someone's life, she replies, and there is no bitterness in it, just truth, just the weight of experience speaking for her, and he nods again, slower this time, acknowledging that too. Maybe not, he says, but it is a reason to start paying attention, and something about the way he says it makes it clear that this is not a passing curiosity for him, not something he will forget by tomorrow, and that realization unsettles her more than anything else has so far, because attention from someone like him does not come without consequences, even if he does not intend it that way. And she looks away for a second, her mind moving quickly now, weighing what she needs against what this could cost her, because nothing in her life has ever come without a price, and she has learned that the hard way. And when she looks back at him, her expression has changed again, softer in some ways, but still firm, still cautious. "I do not need someone to fix my life," she says. And this time there is something personal in it, something that sounds like it has been said before, maybe more than once. And he does not interrupt, does not argue. He just listens, really listens in a way that surprises even himself. And after a second he responds, his voice quieter. Now, less controlled, more honest. "Then do not let me fix it," he says. "Let me be part of it." And that lands differently, deeper, because it is no longer about control or power. It is about presence, about choosing to stay instead of stepping in and taking over. And Emily feels it, even if she does not fully trust it yet. And for a long moment neither of them moves, the noise of the city continuing around them like none of this matters, like this is just another conversation between strangers at a bus stop. But it is not. It is something else entirely, something that is beginning to take shape in ways neither of them expected. And finally she exhales, the tension in her shoulders easing just slightly as she makes a decision she is not entirely sure about. "One conversation," she says, her voice steady again. "That is it." And he nods without hesitation, because for him that is more than enough to begin. They do not go far because Emily refuses to step into his world, and Julian understands that faster than he expects. So instead of offering a car or an office or anything that feels too far removed from reality, he gestures toward a small diner just across the street, the kind of place most people would pass without noticing. And for a second she hesitates, her eyes flicking between him and the door like she is measuring whether this still counts as safe, whether this still fits within the boundaries she set. And then she nods once, sharp and controlled, and walks ahead of him without waiting, as if reminding both of them that she is choosing this, not being led into it. And inside the diner the air is warm, filled with the smell of coffee and something fried, something familiar, and it grounds the moment immediately, strips away whatever imbalance might have followed them in, and they slide into a booth across from each other, the vinyl seat creaking slightly under movement, the table worn but clean. And for a second neither of them speaks because now that they are here, now that the distance has closed, the weight of the conversation feels more real, more defined, and a waitress comes by, placing 2 glasses of water on the table without asking, her voice casual as she asks what they want, and Emily orders coffee. Nothing else, her voice steady but her fingers tightening slightly around the edge of the menu. And Julian watches that small detail, that instinct to hold back even when she clearly needs more. And he orders the same, matching her without comment, because anything else would shift the balance again. And when the waitress leaves, the silence returns, softer now but still present, and Emily leans back slightly, crossing her arms as if preparing herself. "So," she says, her tone direct, "start talking." And he nods, not rushing, not filling the space unnecessarily. "My name is Julian Cross." He begins, and the name lands heavier than expected. Not because she recognizes it immediately, but because of the way he says it, like it carries weight whether she knows it or not. And she tilts her head slightly, studying him again. "And what does that mean?" she asks. And there is no sarcasm in it, just honesty, just a refusal to assume anything. And for the first time a faint shift crosses his expression, something almost like surprise, because he is not used to being unknown, not used to introductions that do not already come with context. And he exhales quietly before answering. "It means I run a company," he says simply, and she raises an eyebrow slightly, unimpressed. "A lot of people run companies," she replies, and that almost makes him smile. Almost, because she is not wrong, and yet everything about his world says otherwise, and he leans forward just slightly, his tone still calm but more grounded now. "It means I have resources," he clarifies, and this time the words shift the air between them. Not dramatically, not enough to break the moment, but enough to remind her of the difference she has been trying to ignore, and she nods slowly, absorbing that without reacting the way most would, without leaning in or pulling back, just processing it. "And you think that changes something for me?" she asks, And there is that quiet challenge again. That line she refuses to let anyone cross without reason. And he shakes his head once, steady. No, he says. I think what you did changed something for me. And that lands differently, deeper, because it shifts the focus entirely, away from what he can give and toward what she already has. And for a moment, Emily does not respond, her gaze dropping briefly to the table before. Lifting again, softer this time, less defensive but not unguarded. And outside the window the city keeps moving, unaware of the quiet shift happening inside this small diner, where two lives that should never have crossed are now sitting across from each other, not as a transaction, not as a test, but as the beginning of something neither of them fully understands yet. And for the first time since this started, the conversation feels real. Emily does not realize how much that moment in the diner will matter until weeks later, because at the time it feels small, contained, just a conversation between two people from completely different worlds trying to understand each other without losing themselves in the process. And she does not say yes to anything that day. Not to a job, not to help, not to promises that sound too easy to be real. She only agrees to meet again, to talk again, to see if what he is offering is something she can respect, not just accept. And that becomes the line everything follows, slow, careful, deliberate. Because Julian does not push. He does not try to solve her life overnight the way he could, the way he has done for others without thinking. Instead, he shows up, again and again, sometimes at the same diner, sometimes at the community center, sometimes just walking beside her as she moves through her day, learning her world instead of pulling her into his. And it is unfamiliar for him, uncomfortable in ways he does not expect, because for the first time he is not in control of the outcome. He is just present. And for Emily that matters more than anything he could have offered with money, because presence cannot be faked the way generosity sometimes can. And slowly, without either of them naming it, something shifts, not into romance at first, but into trust, into a quiet understanding that builds in the spaces between conversations, in the way he listens when she talks about her brother, in the way she challenges him when he says something that feels too detached from reality. And one afternoon, weeks later, everything comes to a head in a way neither of them planned, because she walks into the lobby of a building she has never been inside before, following an address he gave her for a meeting he insisted was different, important, and the moment the doors open she feels it, the shift in atmosphere, the scale, the quiet efficiency of people moving with purpose, and then she sees his name, not spoken, not introduced, but displayed in a way that leaves no room for misunderstanding, Julian Cross. And suddenly everything she chose not to ask, everything she chose not to assume, stands in front of her all at once, undeniable, overwhelming. And when he walks